With the countless death flags that have been thrown Boruto's way, this upcoming fight has everything on the line, as we actually see Kashin Koji, who can see the future, actually be worried by the decisions that Boruto has just taken. And this is what we're going to be discussing in today's video, how this fight will ultimately change the Boruto series forever. And the reason why I say this is because we do not only have the threat of Boruto dying, we also have the threat of Momoshiki, who Boruto once viewed such a big threat that ending his own life would be better than letting Momoshiki run rampant. And with a Momoshiki whose life is attached to Boruto, there is no way that Momoshiki ends up letting Boruto die. So what I believe Kashin Koji is truly afraid of is the resurrection of Momoshiki himself. And not just him coming back in his old form, but him coming back in Boruto. As one thing that is quite different from the Naruto series that we see in Boruto now is the fact that with Naruto, Kurama made Naruto stronger through the various abilities that he possessed in his chakra. But it is quite different for Boruto. Boruto has already outscaled even fused Momoshiki that we saw before the time skip, as we had a fused Momoshiki that was contending with the likes of Naruto and Sasuke. Whether you believe that Naruto by himself is as strong as fused Momoshiki, or both Naruto and Sasuke are stronger, this was around the power that fused Momoshiki scaled. So to keep this simple, let's say fused Momoshiki is weaker than Naruto and Sasuke combined, as this was clearly shown in that fight. When Naruto and Sasuke end up meeting a threat like Jougan, and even end up using Kurama's powers, they were promptly defeated by Jougan. And now in the time skip, we have somebody like Boruto. Somebody like Boruto who is capable of dealing with Code, who had his version 2 karma active, and has numerous statements by Amado, by Damien, and by a bunch of characters in the series that he is truly in fact stronger than Jougan. A Jougan that defeated Naruto and Sasuke together, and a Naruto and Sasuke that defeated fused Momoshiki, obviously with a Boruto who did play a hand in the ending of that fight. But one thing that we now have to see here is the fact that instead of it being Momoshiki that is making Boruto stronger, now in the series, with the strength that Boruto has achieved, Boruto is now making Momoshiki stronger, and this is why his approach has truly changed. As before the time skip started, we had a Boruto who was in constant conversation with Momoshiki, which ultimately led to him seeing the future and potentially even averting the future that Momoshiki saw, of him going into despair after losing everything. That future, in some way, was averted, which has caused Momoshiki's entire game plan to change, as we haven't heard anything about Momoshiki coming from himself personally. What we have heard is that when Boruto ends up using the karma, he does end up feeling like he is about to die, and this means that he is slowly being pushed to the corner of his psyche, with Momoshiki who is now starting to take control. So Boruto using the karma, arguably one of his strongest powers, he can't do so anymore. But when on the verge of death, this will clearly change, as Boruto will be forced to end up using his karma. And I believe that there is a blurry line between exactly what Kashin Koji is trying to say. We clearly know that Kashin Koji has been withholding information from Boruto. So when he says to Boruto that he will die, there are multiple different ways that we can interpret it. Boruto did say that he felt like he was going to die when he ended up using the karma when he fought versus the likes of Code, which ended up leading towards him running away and Sasuke being turned into a tree. While there's also a different sort of death, a death where Boruto actually ends up dying, the one we almost ended up seeing versus Jura, where Jura sniped him from quite far after he dropped his guard, believing that he had defeated Hidari and could now save Sasuke. Now, I've presented two different ways in which Boruto could die, so which one exactly would happen? And personally, I believe, through the title of this video, you can already tell that the death that Kashin Koji is referring to is the death of Boruto himself as an identity, where Boruto ceases to live as he ends up using his karma in this fight as he is pushed to the brink of death. Because if I'm already going to die, might as well use my karma and attempt to take both of us out before I actually end up passing. And this could end up being the method that Boruto ends up resorting to. We know that Kawaki still hasn't gotten his limiters removed, and he is still in conversation with Amato. If he is to get his limiters removed and get the boost from extra Shibai cells, as we know that Amato doesn't want Kawaki to die, then we have a clear waiting time that Kawaki has to endure. We still haven't gotten a confirmation that Amato has even agreed to it taking place, as he says that he wants Kawaki to bring his daughter back first. But we have a Kawaki who wants the opposite, his powers back first. So for that whole conversation to take place, and for Kawaki to also go under the knife and have Amato actually start changing his body in a way that makes him stronger and fix his parameters, we have already seen that it takes a certain amount of time. So for that to happen before Boruto is actually forced to fight by himself, it will take a period of time, which leads me to believe that Kawaki will either come too late or probably not come at all before Boruto ends up using the karma. So what exactly is going to take place at that moment? So from everything that we can see at the current moment, we have a Matsuri and a Ryu who have been technically dealt with. Although we did see Boruto defeat the likes of Matsuri, unlike Ryu, we don't see Matsuri have her torn soul appear. So I don't know exactly what Jura is going to do, or if Jura is going to pull up alone, but Matsuri is technically still alive. Maybe we get a confirmation that she is not, but we still see bits and pieces of Matsuri laying around, and her soul thorn has not appeared. With Hidari, we had him completely get disintegrated before his torn soul appeared from his ashes. And with Sarada, we had a Ryu get completely disintegrated and then his torn soul appeared from his ashes. This is not necessarily what we see from Matsuri. So we could end up seeing a 2v1 versus the likes of Jura and Matsuri, or whoever comes to collect Matsuri and then bring her back to the shinju dimension. We have the likes of Hidari, we have the likes of Momoshiki, who are all ready and standing by to deal with such a threat known as Boruto. And that is the top priority of Jura. He wants to deal with Boruto before he even starts thinking about the plan of creating a chakra fruit. So Boruto versus Jura, it is going to happen next chapter. And a lot of people do mention how Boruto can zip around and then go back to the place where he came from. But I feel like the story is clearly implying that that is not really a possibility. The one reason why it could not is due to the fact that they could end up finding exactly where their hideout is. One thing that we do end up noting is that they are in the land of wind, so they are pretty close to everything that is taking place. So taking the risk of coming back and then having Kashin Koji potentially be revealed to the likes of Jura, somebody who actually has the powers to go against them due to him being able to see the future, that may not be the wisest choice for Boruto to end up taking. So what does Boruto do now? The only thing that Boruto can do is to fight. And it could be argued that he has the help of Team 7. We know that Konohamaru is pretty much injured, so maybe he cannot do too much. Sarada is on the ground and she is unconscious after using so much chakra, so she can't do much. So we have Mitsuki and Ayara. Yaro is pretty much down. So what can they truly do against the likes of Jura, who could potentially pull out with Momoshiki and Hidari? Whether he does or doesn't, it really doesn't change much due to how much it appears like Jura is currently outscaling the likes of Boruto, and Boruto is the strongest person minus Damien that we have currently seen in the time skip so far. So it's going to be quite interesting to see exactly who are going to be the guys fighting, but we know for sure Boruto versus Jura is going to take place, and in that fight, I believe that Boruto would end up truly acknowledging the fact that he has to use the karma, and even if it results in his death, he has to take down Jura at this current instance. So based on what actually ends up happening, whether potentially even Jura ends up being defeated in this moment with a Kawaki who ends up popping up, I truly doubt this will be the case, then I would really see this arc being quite long, like a arc / saga of the Ishiki arc and Kawaki, where we had a bunch of different things take place and still had a certain villain group for multiple chapters, and then it came to an end after chapter 54. I do believe that this arc is going to be one that is quite long, and one thing that has to happen is Momoshiki playing a role, and that means that Boruto ends up using his karma. So if Boruto ends up using his karma, there are a number of things that could actually end up taking place. One thing that I truly believe will take place is the fact that Boruto will have to go to sleep, and that will be for a certain period of time, and it could simply be due to the fact that he already feels like he is dying when he's using his karma, or he ends up watching some of his friends be killed, like the likes of Konohamaru, who it appears like was supposed to die according to Kashin Koji's vision. And we know that from Kashin Koji's vision, Boruto appearing in this fight results in his death. So there is a lot of things that are going to happen that will actually end up weakening the force of the leaf. Thus, I believe that Momoshiki taking over is something that's quite likely to happen. But when he does take over, is he going to fight versus the likes of Jura? Are they not going to have a common interest? And this is something that we have seen with the likes of Code, although it could be said that they're only cooperating with Code due to the simple fact that Code is basically the reason why they are able to live at the current moment in the series. And thus they are giving Code a favor, and maybe might not do the same for Boruto, but with the information that Momoshiki ends up possessing, and him basically taking over the life of Boruto and acting as Boruto Uzumaki is going to be quite critical to see exactly what ends up taking place, as something that would be a crazy plot twist is if, just like Momoshiki did say in chapter 72, he ends up living the life of Boruto Uzumaki, where he takes over Boruto's body and doesn't make it too apparent that he has now become Momoshiki. This would mean that Boruto's voice would say the same, and he could activate and deactivate the karma without any sort of problem. And this would essentially mean that it is impossible to tell who is really in control, just like it would be quite hard to tell whether it's Jougan or actually Ishiki, because with Jougan, just like what Momoshiki is alluding to doing to Boruto, this is what Ishiki did to Jougan. He pushed Jougan to the corner of his psyche, and then we don't see two different voices when it comes to Jougan and Ishiki. He only has that Jougan voice, and when he becomes Ishiki, his voice then ends up changing to the voice of his actual body. So with Boruto, who is pushed to the corner of his psyche as he slowly feels like he is dying, Momoshiki could take over, making it seem like he is actually Boruto himself, and end up fulfilling that prophecy of him living Boruto's life. And then it would be quite interesting to see whether Kawaki ends up coming in this fight or not. And with Kawaki with his limiters, if Momoshiki takes over and is still fighting the likes of Jura and potentially the other shinju, we do know that whenever Momoshiki takes over, due to all of his abilities and access to the karma, he does end up fighting in a way that is sometimes superior to Boruto himself, if we are completely honest. So when Kawaki does end up making an appearance, him versus Jura, if Jura ends up pulling up alone, it could be much closer of a fight where Jura then ends up retreating. And then what happens next is what's going to be truly scary. With a Momoshiki who could be in Boruto's body undetected, with nobody truly knowing that he is actually Momoshiki, things could slowly go left, with a Kashin Koji who ends up dying to the hands of Boruto. And those actions that he takes in Boruto's body is what is going to make it harder and harder for Boruto to come back, as it will truly make him despair. What Momoshiki wanted when he took over before Sasuke ended up saving Boruto was him killing his friends, so that Boruto wouldn't have a true reason to take over. I'm not necessarily saying that Boruto or Momoshiki inside Boruto is going to be what leads to the village being destroyed. That's not what I'm saying. But taking out key people for Boruto, like Kashin Koji, is what is going to allow Momoshiki to stay under control for an even longer period of time, as he is strategically killing people to make it harder for Boruto to actually end up having the will to come back. And that's what I'm saying. Obviously, there have been 1,000 of death flags for Boruto to eventually end up dying. However, we have already been given a slow plot point, a very minor plot point. I wouldn't say too minor, as it is quite important as it deals with Momoshiki, but something that a lot of people are now considering is the death that Boruto was talking about when he was using his karma. So instead of simply being killed by Jura, he is killed by the fact that he ends up using the karma and thus Momoshiki ends up taking over, which, to be 100% honest, and Boruto would agree himself, is actually worse than dying himself. And then seeing what happens. If Boruto ends up changing, it just ends up confirming everything that happens with omnipotence, with a Boruto whose actions are more aligned with Momoshiki, and thus everything keeps pointing to the fact that he truly is this Hokage killer, this traitor that ended up deceiving everybody and ended up being this ungrateful kid that killed his adopted father. And for Kawaki, it would strengthen his resolve for dealing with the likes of Boruto, as he is the only other person who would truly know that Momoshiki has taken over. So Momoshiki really popping up and Boruto using his karma will ruin all the work that Boruto has done so far and truly make him despair at that point. And him coming back would be something that is quite difficult, but will obviously end up taking place. With a Kawaki who will never trust Boruto again, and this is why Boruto says to Kawaki that this may actually be the only possible outcome, because some of the responsibility does lay on Boruto and him using the karma, ultimately leading towards Momoshiki actually coming back. However, one thing that we do see in that time skip scene is Boruto using the karma, and he also has the Jougan. So what I believe will be the saving grace for Boruto coming back is the Jougan. So to find out more about how that could actually end up taking place, you have to watch this video right here.